Today we're going to go through positive and negative indices. So to start off with, we're just going to focus on the positive ones. Now, remember, an indice is a power. So, for example, something like 3 to the power of 4. We'd say this is a positive indice because the power is a positive number. And remember, this would be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 times itself 4 times. And in this case, that would give us 81. Also, though, you could have positive powers to fractions. So, for example, let's say we had the fraction 2/3, and that could be to a positive power of 2. What you need to remember with the positive powers, the fractions of positive powers, is that you must do the power to both parts of the fraction. So this actually means you do 2 to the power of 2 divided by 3 to the power of 2. And 3 squared is 2 times 2. 3 squared is 3 times 3. Remember, it's always times itself. So this would equal 4/9. Also, you could have this for mixed fractions. So let's say we had 1 and 2/5 to the power of 3. What you'd want to do in this case is, first of all, change this to an improper fraction. So if you remember, if this is 1 whole and 2/5, because the second part is out of 5 for the fifths, you want to think of it all in fifths. So a whole would be 5/5, and then we've got 2 more. So that would be 7/5 altogether. Some people think about this by doing the whole number times the denominator, then adding the numerator. So 1 times 5 add 2, and that gives you the top number. So that's kind of a quick way of doing it. And then for this, again, you just got to remember you do the power to the top and the bottom. So it would be 7 cubed on top, which is 7 times 7 times 7, and then 5 cubed on the bottom, like that. For this one, just use the calculator to do the 7 cubed, which is 343, and the 5 cubed might be one that you're more familiar with. That's 125. So to first of all practice the positive indice powers, you can try this odd one out sheet here. So the idea is, in each box you'll have pairs that match, and there'll be one number that doesn't match with any others. So I'd recommend, if you've got 4 different colours, that would be quite useful for this. Okay, so if I do the first box with you, so 3 cubed, that would be 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27, so that would match with this one. Next I could try maybe the 2 to the power of 4. That would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and make sure you are multiplying each time, not adding. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So that's this one. And then we've also got 1 to the power of 8 here. Now 1, if you keep timesing 1 by 1, no matter how many times you do it, you're going to end up with 1. And then we should have one more pair in the box. So 5 squared would be 5 times 5, which is 25. So my odd one out, which I can circle, the first box is 8. So if you are able to print off the worksheet, you can do it on the sheet. If not, you can pause the screen here and copy down the worksheet and then try it in your books. So pause the video here, and then I'm going to show you the answers. Okay, so here are the answers for that one. So if you've got the same odd ones out as me, then that means you should have got that correct, so that's really good. If you weren't sure though of any of them, just pause the video again and then you can correct the answers and have a go at any that you weren't sure about. Section E and F are quite a bit harder than the other ones, so if we were getting A, B, C and D correct, that's really good. Okay, now we're going to look at negative indices. So the positive ones was just a bit of a kind of like a warm-up to remind yourself of those, and negative indices will be more new to you. So what I mean by a negative indice is having a value, so a number could be a fraction or a whole number, so say 4, and the power is negative, so for example it is 4 to the minus 2. Now there is a general rule for negative indices, and the rule is that the negative means that you need to use the reciprocal of this value. So the reciprocal of 4 is 1 over 4. So in general, to find the reciprocal of a number, we always do 1 divided by the original number. Then once you've done that, you remember what the value was. So this was minus 2, therefore I need to do this value squared. Then, like we did last time, remember you square top and bottom, so it will be 1 times 1 on the top and 4 times 4 on the bottom, which gives us 1 over 16. So if we just try another one of these, let's say we had 2 to the negative 4. The first step you must remember to do is remember that the negative means we need the reciprocal of this value. So that means 1 divided by this number, so 1 divided by 2. And then because it was the power of negative 4, all of this to the power of 4. Okay, so then 1 to the power of 4 would be 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. And then 2 to the power of 4, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So the top, our numerator would be 1. And then the denominator, if we multiplied all these together, we would get, so that's 4 times 2 is 8 times 2 is 16. So 2 to the negative 4 would be the same as 1 to the 1 over 16. Now you can also do this for fractions. Okay, so for example, let's try 4/3 to the negative 2. Now remember, we start off by making sure we've got the reciprocal of this value. Now on the other ones it was quite simple because 1 divided by the number just made it into a fraction. But if I write 1 divided by 4/3, it doesn't quite look as nice. So what you can think about, I'll just do a little bit of working down here. We're actually going to do 1 divided by 4/3. And when we divide by a fraction, we use the rule of keep, flip and time. So we keep the first value, so the 1, and then we flip the second fraction. So I flipped it over and then we times it. And that would just give me 3/4 because 1 times 3 is 3, and there'd technically be a 1 under there as well. 1 times 4 is 4. So this actually becomes 3/4 reciprocal, and then because it was minus 2 all squared. So then 3 times 3 would be on the numerator and 4 times 4 would be on the denominator, which gives us 9 over 16 as our answer. Now you've probably noticed that here what I've actually done is just flip the fraction upside down, and that's the kind of cheap way of remembering it. So you don't need to do this working out every time, but this shows you why the reciprocal is 3 over 4. So I'll just show you one more of those so you can do it like the quicker way. So let's say we've got, let's try 2/3 to the minus 3. So first of all, the negative means we need the reciprocal. So we can just flip the fraction upside down because it would be 1 over 2/3, which just means I flip the fraction. And then we think about this because it's -3, this would be to the power of 3. So on the top I'd have 3 cubed, and on the bottom 2 cubed. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. Okay, so that's the kind of quicker way of just doing that. Okay, then there's one other thing you need to know, which you should have covered before, but just as a recap before you try the next task, and that is that anything to the power of 0 is always 1. So, for example, 3 to the power of 0 will equal 1. I don't know, 5 to the power of 0 will equal 1. Even if you had, I don't know, 12,567 to the power of 0, this will all equal 1. So you should now be ready to have a go at the second part of the worksheet, which is like this. So again, if you need to copy down the worksheet, you can pause the video and copy down the boxes into your book. It's the same thing as last time. You need to match up the pairs, and there should be one odd one out in each box. And you might need to do a little bit of working on these ones, so make sure you've got some paper or your book nearby to have a go at it. And the same as the last one, the questions get slightly harder. So G, H, I are the more straightforward ones, and then J is a little bit harder, and K and L are definitely more challenging because they involve more fractions and things like that. So pause the video here and have a go at that, and I'll show you the answers in a moment. Okay, so here are my answers for those. Well done if you got these right. And don't worry if you didn't get them all right, just make sure you pause the video and compare your answers and have a go at any again that you didn't quite get right, and you can always email me if you need any other help.